All right, everyone, good morning. Appreciate you all joining us here on behalf of WS Conley, Landscape Supply, 10 Barge Seeds, Walker Supply. Welcome to our final webinar in our Learn series. Final webinar this spring. We'll be picking these back up in the fall, starting in September there. But today we've got Dr. Matt Fleetwood. He's going to be talking to us about soil surfactants and adjuvants, understanding their function to maximize their performance. My name is Derek Cataldi. I'm the district sales representative for the Central Virginia area with Landscape Supply. As many of you know, education is a core value for the entire WS Conley suite of companies, and we continue to offer in-person and virtual education opportunities to serve our customers. You also see us out there, supporting our local trade organizations and national associations. So again, we try to get out and provide as many opportunities as we can for our customers and to help our organizations as much as possible. All right, before we, I hand it over to Matt today, let's go over a few things, different ways that you can interact with us. If you do have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat. If you hover your mouse across the bottom of the screen, there's a chat function, there's a raise hand function. Either one, I'll be kind of monitoring that. And if we do see a question, I'll be sure to get with Matt here and see if we can stop for a minute and get the question answered. So your participation is we would welcome that. So lastly, with that, you can see Matt, and I'll get Matt to share his screen and take over here momentarily. But Dr. Fleetwood is responsible for managing the turfgrass product portfolio of adjuvants, soil surfactants, and other supplemental maintenance products for Precision Labs. He joined Precision in 2022 and handles their experimental product pipeline, research trials, and new product launches, and basically works with different departments internally to bring essentially new innovations and new solutions to the market. Dr. Fleetwood has his bachelor's and his doctorate from the University of Missouri Columbia. And he, being a former youth athlete and avid golfer, understands that to provide the level of playing surface that we're looking for, it requires a unique set of tools, which he is passionate about innovating and strives to provide the best solutions that we can for his customers. So again, Dr. Fleetwood's going to break down the various types of products available on the market and provide insight on proper use and selection to address the whatever the agronomic may be for a particular site. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt and get this going. But again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us, and we'll go from there. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction, Kevin, and thank you guys for all joining today. So as Kevin kind of said, we're going to be going over soil surfactants and various adjuvants, how to understanding their function, and then how to maximize their function and help utilize it all around your course. And so again, as Kevin discussed, thank you to all of our sponsors today for the talk, all listed here, and helping provide some information to you guys today. So just because probably this is most of the first time of you ever, any of you guys really interacting with me or hearing about me, just want to give a background. As Kevin said, I got my bachelor's from the University of Missouri in breeding, biotech, and biology and crop management. And when I was out in the heat of the summer trying to do corn breeding, I realized that was not my passion. And I moved on to get my PhD in turfgrass. And in turfgrass, and when I was doing my PhD, it really was all about wetting agents and how they affect water, even infiltration, hydration, or both within the USGA greens. And that's what led me to my role here at Precision Labs currently. I started back in 2022. And as Kevin described, looking at all of our products from the experimental side through the research with universities and all the way to the commercialization and having the technical aspects with all of our products. And so today what we're going to go over, initially we're going to go over our soil surfactants, looking at the sources of water repellency, kind of giving basically a brief introduction on what soil surfactants and water repellency is, just to kind of get everyone on the same level playing field. What is a soil surfactant, the different classes that we at Precision Labs think there are of soil surfactants, and then how do you utilize those in your spray programs to either enhance performance of your playing surface or other protection products that you may be applying. And then we'll move on to the adjuvants, the various classes of adjuvants within there. When to use non-additive surfactants versus MSOs or high surfactant oils. Kind of what the CPDA is and how that goes into adjuvants and why we really stand behind the CPDA and they support us. And the production product performance and how those performances of these protection products are really enhanced with the use of adjuvants. So what we'll start now is going into what is soil water repellency. And soil water repellency are hydrophobic materials attached to soil particles, reducing the soil's wettability and retention of water. So as you see here, we kind of have a depiction of a soil particle, and we have these molecules floating on the outside of the soil particle. And these are all hydrophobic materials that come from breaking down. And what we'll get into in the next image is how we get those sources and how these hydrophobic materials really starting to bind onto the soil particles, reducing the water repellency, leading to issues within your playing surface. So what are some of these sources? So one of the initial sources is just degradation of waxy cuticles of these leaves. As plant leaves break down, the waxes on those leaves are a potential source and actually a high source of these organic materials coating the soil particles, leading to hydrophobicity, along with decomposing organic matter. All these decomposing organic matters have carbons and things that start binding to the soil particles. And once they dry down, they start repelling water away. Same with plant root exudates and fungal hyphae exudates. So as either roots start exuding and trying to move through the soil profile, or these fungi start trying to move through the soil profile, to make it easier for them to move through there, they start exuding these excretions. And in those excretions, it really starts pushing soil particles away from each other. And in there are all these hydrophobic materials. So as you can see from these four sources of water repellency, there's really no way around trying to avoid any of, soil water repellency not occurring in your soil. It will always be naturally occurring. It's kind of a buffer for Mother Nature, this soil water repellency. So there are things that will always lead to the source of water repellency. And what are some of these negative effects that we kind of know of? Preferential flow being probably the most prevalent, other than localized dry spot, which is one and the same. And what preferential flow is as you can see kind of on the image on the right here, where all of that blue dye is, what they did is they dyed water blue, and then they at the top, what you can see is they drenched all the soil, and they wanted to see where that water was flowing. And because all of the surrounding area that is not blue had hydrophobicity in it, it pushed the water down in a path that was straight down and not even in uniform. And that's what then leads to the localized dry spot, which you see here on the bottom image, right? If you kind of cut that green in half that has localized dry spot, you would see water moving ununiformly through the soil and kind of in these preferential flow pathways. And what does that also lead into? As you could, understand, all of these turf roots are in the upper root zone of here. If you have nutrients, or other soil pesticides that you're applying, you want those to be moving through the soil uniformly and not moving too quickly through the soil profile through these preferential flow pathways. So reducing the water repellency in the soil will help the uptake of these nutrients and this dispersion of these nutrients and soil pesticides when you apply them. So now, what are soil surfactants? Soil surfactants are surface active agents. That's where you get the word surfactant. And what they do is they all lower the surface tension between either a liquid-liquid interface, a liquid-solid interface, or a liquid-air interface. And really what we're trying to break here is what those purple arrows is looking at each other. Those purple arrows represent the surface tension of a liquid. That's where all the molecules that are on the inside, the two molecules that are lower, are pulling on and trying to get the attraction of that water to come to them. And so there's a little surface tension on the outside, which leads to these droplets sitting there on the surface of either your table or what have you. You see them form that droplet, and that's because all of the water molecules on the internal portion of that water are pulling all the other outside molecules in that water droplet toward each other, and that's what forms that droplet, and that's really the surface tension of that water molecule. We know they do that, but what really are they? So they're called amphiphilic molecules. And what that means is they have two portions to them. One is a hydrophilic side, which is the head region, as you can see in the image on the right. That blue portion of that molecule is hydrophilic, so it loves water. It wants to be attached to water. But then how we kind of counteract that is there's a hydrophobic region on there that repels water, right? So what this does is it actually forms a bridge between materials that like to repel water and water itself, right? This is almost a bridge. And so what surfactants do to break the surface tension and how they kind of influence either your solutions to either infiltrate, hydrate the soil profile. Like I said, there's that strong bond interface. That's that surface tension. These surfactants will come in and break the attraction of the water molecules to itself, and it'll actually start being attracted to these surfactants, right? So once all these water molecules are not trying to pull together, they start spreading out more and more. And that's kind of what we see in these images here, right? So these are all actually different soil surfactants that are utilized widely throughout the industry, either from our product line or from other product lines from our competitors. And as you can see, they all do reduce the surface tension of water, which is at 72 millinewtons. That's that per meter. That's that unit you see there. So they all significantly reduce the surface tension of the water, but they do it all differently because of the different active ingredients that are in there, right? And so this is kind of trying to combat a common question in the industry is, are all soil surfactants the same? And so all soil surfactants are not the same. And we're going to kind of get into that and how we here at Precision classify these different categories of soil surfactants, right? So moving on, this is actually a brief video that I did when I was in grad school, kind of just to show the complete difference that you'll see in various chemistries of wetting agents, right? And so to kind of preface this video, on the left, that FS is fresh sand. So that's just any sand that you'll see at the beach that immediately starts wetting, right? That will start just completely wetting initially. All the vials that have HS on them are hydrophobic sand. So when we test some of these wetting agents in the lab, we want a uniform soil basis. And so we actually make this sand hydrophobic, and you'll start to see water sitting on top of this hydrophobic sand. And for the two other vials, we're going to add two different wetting agents in there that have two different characteristics, one of holding and one of infiltrating. So as you can see, when we wet up that fresh sand, everything starts to wet up evenly. The hydrophobic sand, nothing is penetrating. That water will stay there for hours to days, potentially. The first wetting agent we're going to be applying is that hydration wetting agent. And as you can see, there's not much change initially, but as that surfactant starts working at that interface of the soil and water, slowly starting to bubble, slowly to start to have that infiltrate in there, but very slow. This was an infiltrator, as you can see. That water got sucked up initially and immediately through that soil profile because these chemistries are different, right? We have a hydrator that is slowly trying to hydrate the soil when we have an infiltrator that is trying to just strictly move the water through the soil, right? There are products that do different things. So again, these soil surfactants are not the same. And so we want to learn how we can utilize these different functions best in our programs. And so here at Precision Labs, what we have are these custom solutions, right? So we have things from our infiltration line, from Ellipso all through Duplex, to our hydration product, which is Magnus, and then a combination of these products in between, right? Because sometimes you don't want to just move water. Sometimes you also just don't want to hold water. You want a combination of both. And so we have, formulated various combinations of these products and different active ingredients in there to provide a balanced hydration and infiltration within your soil. And so that's kind of how we look at it. And so the two chemistries that we really, in two categories we break these into are infiltration surfactants and hydration surfactants. And so for infiltration, what these are actually doing is it reduces the surface tension of water, which results in that movement through these thick thatch layers, turf types, heavy soils with tight pores. What these infiltration surfactants are really doing is working on the water itself. It's not really having much of an interaction with the soil particles. Instead, it's working on the water, making that water surface tension more reduced. And so that just moves very quickly through the soil profile. Alternatively, we have hydration products, right? And so these hydration products like I described, that bridge kind of characteristic of it, they will actually anchor onto these organic substances, either it being thatch, either it being soil particles, and they will form that bridge. And what they'll do is they'll then start trying to grab water that is floating through that in the soil matrix and holding onto it more tightly to a soil particle that may not have been able to hold onto it naturally, right? And so that results in more of a uniform wetting front that's uniform, lateral, and moving vertically. It's all even throughout your soil profile. And so these are the two types of different wetting agents that and classes that we really categorize and know that there are here at Precision Labs. Going even more into that to support some of these things with data, you know, a lot of these things, what I want to do is introduce concepts and then support it with data that we've done either in the lab or in the field to show you, you know, we've really been doing our due diligence to understand these products. And as you can see here, we have 3 wetting agents and the untreated. And so a way of measuring water repellency, you can do 2 methods. One method is just having a water droplet on the surface of your soil core and physically timing how long it takes to penetrate that in a matter of seconds. And so if it takes a longer time to penetrate into that soil, as you can see at that untreated right here, taking around 80 seconds to penetrate, we would kind of consider that to be hydrophobic in a sense. Then when we look at it, when that soil is treated with 2 or 3 different wetting agents, you can see differences in how the water penetrates into these soil cores that are truly hydrophobic, as you can see in that untreated, right? You have 2 of our products, one, which is Ellipso Plus, which is our true infiltrator. You see that's the lowest, took the lowest time for that water droplet to penetrate within 2.6 seconds. Compared to a competitor that is more of a hydrator and has some infiltration claims. As you can see, that took 66 seconds to penetrate into that core, right? So there are differences in these active ingredients and how they really perform. And when we have a combination product like Vivax, you get some of that immediate infiltration, but it is not as excessive as Ellipso Plus, because we want that with our Vivax product, we want to have infiltration, but we also want to have balanced and even hydration through that soil. And so to kind of show you something visually here that we've done in the lab. So on the left is a sand column that was treated with nothing. It was untreated, and we've had put water through this column, and everything is saturated. As you can see, that sand completely saturated. But when we treated the column on the right with that Ellipso Plus product, which is an infiltration product, what you can kind of see is up at the top, you have more dry sand, and all that water is isolated and located at the bottom of that infiltration column, showing that when Ellipso Plus is in this soil matrix, it truly does help move and push water through the system. And, you know, in a system where there was no wetting agent and everything is hydrated, when you add these infiltration surfactants, they will start to physically move the water through your system. And you can utilize these in different places around the course, and we'll get to that later. So moving on to the hydration piece of it, like we said, these hydration soil surfactants really anchor to this organic substances, mainly being soil particles, and they form this bridge, right? And that leads to these uniform lateral wetting fronts that are moving at a good pace through the system, moving vertically through that soil profile and uniformly wetting the root zone from top to bottom. And to kind of bring back that soil particle image that I spoke on previously, and how, you know, we have all these hydrophobic materials floating on the outside, or, anchored on the outside of this soil particle. What hydration surfactants really do in comparison to infiltration surfactants, they anchor on to these organic matter, or these organic acids or organic materials on there, and they form this bridge, right? So as water starts to float through there, we have all these different various water molecules. That's what's depicted in the red and the white molecules. Now we have a soil particle that was once hydrophobic, repelling water, now has a bridge and is able to retain the water within the system and hold it onto a particle that was once hydrophobic. And now we've made that soil particle wettable and able to hold water, able to hold nutrients, or provide nutrients to your growing turf grass. And so, as we said, we kind of have all these custom solutions from this wide span of infiltration and hydration, but we do have a lot of these combination products, right? And speaking to the hydration aspects of some of our combination products, we look at a study that we had down in Georgia with Vivax going against one of our competitors. And so as you can see, soil water content was taken from June into October, and you can see that Vivax overall increased the water holding capacity by 11% throughout this whole trial compared to our competitor. And then compared to the untreated, after that August 12th date, you can start seeing that untreated water content quickly dying off due to just going into that winter time and everything becoming hydrophobic and the water moving through. We held 31% more water in our Vivax treated plots or our hydration treated plots comparatively to the untreated, right? So you can see differences again, not only in just utilizing a soil surfactant with hydration characteristics compared to not utilizing one. You hold 31% more water in your soil, which can potentially correlate to applying less irrigation on your soil to still reach your number that you might have in that you like to reach that threshold. Additionally, with a competitor, these chemistries are different, and we see different performances with our Vivax products compared to other products within the market. And then again, looking at more hydration, I spoke briefly on being able to utilize reduced water inputs because you were utilizing these hydration soil surfactants. Now we look at a different product, which is our Cascade Plus, which is again one of those combination products of infiltration hydration. What we did here and what you'll see over these next 3 graphs is I had 100% irrigation on these plots. So you would just be watering them like you normally would. Then I wanted to kick it down to you only irrigate 60% of what you normally would do, and kick it down even further to 0 to 10%, right? And seeing, okay, how much more water can we hold in these soil surfactant treated plots, these hydration treated plots, comparatively to not having a soil surfactant at all. And what you can see here is that at 100% irrigation, we're holding 14% more water in our Cascade Plus treated plots compared to the untreated. This trend continues into the 60% irrigation. When we reduce that irrigation, you can see that we are still holding the same amount of water that we would have been at 100% of the irrigation at 60%, right? So what we're showing here is that you can even reduce the amount of water that you're applying onto your course or sporting fields daily, and you'll still be able to reach and hold that ideal number, right? So we're holding 21% more water retained here when we even reduce the water inputs by 40%. And then when we look at it at 0 to 10% irrigation, right, we had a drop off, obviously in the plots that had Cascade Plus, but not as significant a drop off as we see with the untreated, right? Showing that when you have these hydration products applied in the soil, they will even hold on to that water until the last very bit, until there's really none being even applied or irrigated, or either from rainfall. These various water inputs, when they're reduced to almost 0 to none, that we can still hold water when these hydration products are in the soil. So as you can see here, this is just showing that you can utilize reduced water inputs from either up to 40% with these soil surfactants in there, and you can still retain 21% more water. So again, this is another field example. So on the left, the image, there was no irrigation and we had Vivax applied. So this is kind of looking, if we tie it back to the grass on the previous slide, this is really that 10% into 0 to 10% water, right? So with no irrigation and Vivax, you can see that those plots are still healthy. They still look green, and they still are really looking like they're playable, right? Compared to the image on the right, you have no Vivax and you have no irrigation. And this is obviously on a longer cut sporting field. You can see that there is localized dry spots starting to form, because the only difference here between these 2 plots is that you have Vivax on one, a soil surfactant that will hold and hydrate, comparatively to have nothing at all, right? So this is where you can see is, all right, if you're coming into a time where you're going to be reducing some of your water inputs either from rain, or you have day-to-day irrigation cycles that your municipalities are enforcing on you, having soil surfactants integrated into your soil or into your programs will allow you to hold on to that water for a longer period of time and not really start to go into these localized dry spot zones that you see. So now talking about just giving a brief breakdown of what we went over with these different classes. So for the infiltration surfactants, these truly are working on the water and they move water through the root zone and the thatch. They provide this faster infiltration that you can sometimes be looking for, and they reduce the runoff and create these firm playing surfaces that sometimes you are looking for. Also, they can be utilized in different ways, right? And so this is actually a story from one of the, I think it's actually a month into the job. We had one of our end users who had a very large PGA event coming up that was going to be televised all across the nation. And the issue that he had is that his bunkers were holding excessive amounts of water at the bottom, and then the sides of the bunkers were not holding water at all. So every time a ball would be hit in there, it would bury in there and it would almost fried eggs. So obviously you can assume that when you're wanting to have professional golfers out there, they're not going to be wanting to cut at this sand and get that ball out of there. There would be some frustrated people. And so he called very stressed out. And what the program we established with him is we have some granular hydration soil surfactants that we had apply, that he had to sprinkle on the outs or the edges of, or the sides of the bunkers. And then on the bottom, we had him apply our infiltration surfactants, right? And once he watered everything in, because with these soil surfactants, you need water to activate the chemistry in them. Once he watered everything in, he initially looked at me like, you're crazy. I already have so much water sitting at the bottom. I do not want to put more water on it. I said, trust us and trust, what we know about these products. And it was able to level and even all of his bunkers out, right? So his bunkers on the bottom that were holding a lot of water, that infiltration chemistry started sucking up and blowing that water out and allowing that to dry out more naturally. And then the sides where we were not holding any water, it actually started allowing water to be retained. And so it evened that whole bunker face and that whole bunker out throughout the whole property. And it really, before the turn, it really saved kind of the bunker play. And so you can utilize these chemistries in different ways, not just only on your soil types, right? For the hydration portions, like we said, uniform soil wetting enhances retention through that root zone. And it really maximizes the irrigation or rain inputs that you're having. Going back to that reduced watering scenario that we saw with those graphs, you can hold potentially up to 32% more water when you're utilizing the hydration chemistries compared to not having it in there at all, right? And you can reduce your overall water inputs and still hit that threshold or hit that level in the soil that you're looking for. Most superintendents have their number that they're trying to target. You can hit and target that number, but utilizing less irrigation. And so ultimately what it does is it reduces your water inputs and your water bill. Hydration products are also very ideal for seeding, establishment, sprigging, or drenching, right? These products are perfect for those scenarios. And so now that we looked at both the infiltration products and the hydration products, we want to look at the combination of the two. And we briefly looked at two products earlier in Cascade and Vivax that kind of had have both infiltration and hydration characteristics, right? So when we look at these are blends, like I said, of these two different active ingredients at varying rates. And what we find is that it allows for more effective use over a broader soil type range, right? Obviously, if you apply a hydrator in a sand-based root zone compared to a heavier soil root zone, you're going to be holding a lot more water in that heavier soil root zone than you would be in that sand root zone, just based on the natural characteristics of how sand does not hold as much as clays do, right? So you can utilize these blends of hydration and infiltration products to kind of level all of your different soil types out, because they will be able to either move or retain water based on the soil that they're being applied to. This also balances the water and the air in the root zone, right? We don't want an oversaturated root zone. We don't want a root zone that has too much air or essentially dry. We want that good balance. Everything in turf and truly everything in life, obviously, is a balance of everything. And what this does also is it maintains consistent hydration and infiltration. Again, going back to that balance, everything is consistent through your root zone, through the hydration and the infiltration when you're using these blends of products. And two of our powerhouses in this in our line are the Cascade Plus and Vivax, right? And so when we look at these hydration and infiltration characteristics, right, I like looking at rooting depth. And so when you look at these roots, you're like, oh, those might be a little short. Well, these are actually zoysia grass, zoysia putting green roots. And so what we see here is because you have hydration and infiltration within the cascade, we're able to access more water deeper and nutrients deeper in that soil profile, allowing these nutrients to, or these roots to grow deeper. And really you start establishing more of a stronger soil structure because these roots are growing deeper and deeper in a healthier plant, right? That would be able to improve the stress resistance that these turf grass plants have, right? And again, like I said, they enhance the soil structure. So what you see here is we saw a combination of hydration and infiltration because all the roots that were, when they were coming into the year, were very shallow. We needed that hydration to really start having those grow, but we also needed those infiltration characteristics to move that wetting front deeper and deeper into the soil profile. So those roots start following, trying to grab more nutrients and water deeper in that soil profile. So now that we went over both of the types from infiltration into hydration, how do you utilize these effectively throughout your soil, throughout your programs? So one of the ways is enhancing pesticide use, right? So soil-based crop protection products, soil surfactants can increase the efficacy of these pesticides, fertilizers, or PGRs when you apply them together, right? And so an example here, so obviously ProStar is outdated, and we're actually doing more studies this year with various fungicides on fairy ring to again show and demonstrate this, but it still gets the point across, right? On the left of that image, ProStar was applied with no surfactant. You can still see that the fairy ring was prevalent through that plot compared to when ProStar and Cascade were applied together. That Cascade was able to uniformly hydrate that whole plot and move that product to the root zone where that needed to be to effectively eliminate that fairy ring and mitigate the hyphae and disease that were moving through that soil. And this is not just obviously with one product, we see it with various other products too, right? And this image is an insignia. As you can see again on the left, that fairy ring really starting to develop. And on the right, when it's applied with Cascade, it significantly improves the efficacy of the insignia on the fairy ring. So this is just one type of way that you can utilize soil surfactants, not just to hydrate, but to also enhance the efficacy of these pesticides, enhance the delivery of these nutrients and fertilizers, or for PGRs, such as root absorbed PGRs, that helps get that chemistry into the soil level where you really want them to be active. Another potential use is in winter preparation, right? So when we're at, when we're going into the fall and going into the winter, we have a lot of hydration, up in that upper portion of that root zone. But what happens is when we have, quick freezes, if we have that water in there, that water is uptaken by the root zone and it actually starts freezing and breaking all the cells within that root zone and especially effectively shattering the crown and killing that above turf grass, which leads into some of this winter kill that we see, right? And so how can soil surfactants help prepare the water? Well, again, we want to move that water, and we have products that will move the water through the soil, right? We don't want to completely blow the system out. We want some water there, but we don't want excess water sitting there like we saw on that previous slide. So that's, again, why you can utilize some of these products like Cascade Plus or Vivax that have that hydration infiltration. They will allow that balanced hydration near the crown, not too excessive, but a lot of that water will be moved through that soil system and will not be allowed to be uptaken by that growing or that turf grass plant that's trying to prepare for the winter, taking up all the nutrients, being ready, and so not allowing that freezing event to occur to shatter all of those cells. And so trying to tie some data to this. Now you're going to look at this probably and be like, I don't know what I'm looking at. So to kind of break it down, another way to measure water repellency is this MED value, to really not get it too deep in there. Basically, there's different concentrations of ethanol mixed with water, and ethanol reduces the surface tension of water at different tiers, right? And so what we'll do is we'll apply different concentrations of ethanol mixed with water on our soil cores, and if it penetrates that soil core within 5 seconds, we know that's that hydrophobicity level. If we apply it and it doesn't penetrate, all right, we go up to the next higher dilution of ethanol into the water, and we see if that will penetrate. And we get to a point and a scale, as you can see in the middle, of where we can determine if some are low hydrophobicity or high hydrophobicity. And to even kind of break it down further, if you're looking at the untreated graph, the further that the bars are moving to the right, the more hydrophobic it is. If they are more reduced and on the left side of the graph, the less hydrophobic it is, right? And so when we're looking at winter preparation, as you can see on the left graph, we're looking at the untreated. In July, August, and September, we have still the same relative hydrophobicity through the year. It starts dying off a little bit as it's going into the wintertime, but it also starts kind of getting the more distributed evenly through the soil profile. As you can see, some of these deeper depths at 3 inches and 2 inches had less hydrophobicity, and as we move into the wintertime, they gain more. And so what you're going to have there are different pockets of very hydrated soils, and soils that have not a lot of water there. So when you're going into the wintertime, you're going to be having a lot of winter kill, either from not having enough hydration or having too much hydration, and then causing that crown to break. When we look at our Cascade Plus treated plots, you can see progressively, month after month, we're reducing the hydrophobicity throughout the soil profile by half, effectively, every time we've applied it on this monthly scale, right? And so once we get to September, we at Precision are big proponents of having a soil surfactant applied in the winter to prepare yourself for the coming spring, right? We want that soil to be well hydrated with limited hydrophobicity. So when we're coming into the spring, we can have a healthy growing turf. And what we've seen is some quicker green up from that, right? And so when we continue this, looking at the wettability of these, now we're looking at it in seconds, right? Going back to that water droplet. If you take that data going from September now into January, these Cascade Plus treated plots, as you can see in the blue, are significantly less hydrophobic than the untreated, right? So we're, again, in even January, we're preparing the soil coming into the next spring, ready to have good, even hydration, distribution of nutrients, and everything, right? And as you can see, so these bars are a little longer, but you see the scale on the first graph was at 140 seconds. Now we're at 35, right? So even though everything was reduced, even in the untreated, the plots that were treated with Cascade are already probably ready to go in February and March, comparatively to some of these, the untreated plots that have different distributions of hydrophobicity throughout their profile. You can have different preferential flows throughout your profile. And so that's where you might get some of your winter kill, or you just might not getting a uniform green up of some of your plots. So this is why, when we're looking at winter preparation, you can really utilize these soil surfactants at the end of your year to make sure that your hydrophobicity is reduced through the year and preparing yourself better for the next coming year. And so this is another thing that we really look at too, right? Soil surfactants have their function, and why we started creating these classes or these combination of soil surfactants is soils are different everywhere, right? And what I learned through my dissertation, and as we've gone here, is that you have to understand your soil, because different wetting agents can potentially perform differently in various soils, right? So understanding your soils, take the soil tests to understand your soil condition, to look at your organic matter, because again, organic matter can be sources of hydrophobicity, and that's also a fickle one because they can also be sources of water retention, right? When those organic matters dry down to an excessive point, they become sources of water repellency. The porosity distribution between micropores and macropores leads into how much water you're holding or moving, excuse me. And then obviously, again, the water repellency level to see how hydrophobic you are starting or where you're at. Heavier soils, like native soils, will retain more water naturally. So you can kind of reduce the rates of what you're going to be using. If you're going to be on a heavier soil that will naturally retain more water, you don't need as much hydration in there. Maybe you look at a middle ground combination product that has some infiltration in there to pull water through and make sure you're not getting too muddy, right? So you can either reduce some of these rates of the products you're using on these heavier soils, because you just truly don't need that high of a rate. A lot of these rates that are on these labels are geared towards applications on the greens. For fairways and rough areas, you don't need as high of a rate, and you will still see great performance out of some of these products. And again, based on that soil type, these chemistries could perform differently. So I want to just kind of take in some more work that I did at the University of Missouri, looking at 3 different courses that were just in the Columbia, Missouri area, right? And so these were, I want to say, within a mile or 2 of each other. But you look at the different the soil properties, looking only at porosity. Course 1, 2, and 3 are completely different. You know, course 1, it has a lot of macropores compared to micropores. So that they are going to be moving more water through those macropores more than course 3 would be, right? Because course 3 has 29% of these micropores, and we know these micropores are really where we hold tightly all of these water that we have in the soil. And so, you know, course 1 potentially would need more of a hydrator because they have natural good infiltration comparatively to course 3, where you already have a ton of hydration with capacity with the micropores, but you have less infiltration capacities, right? And then you even look further at the bulk densities, the organic matters, and the hydrophobicity levels, and everything is all over the charts, right? You know, you have different levels of organic matter, different levels of hydrophobicity. So when we looked at this in a pressure chamber, looking at plant available water, we have 3 different soil surfactants, and these are soil surfactants that are in our line and that were also in competitors' line. And what you can see here is they all perform completely differently at different courses, right? So that's why you truly have to understand your soil type and what your kind of starting basis is, and then utilize that knowledge and say, okay, where am I at? Do I have more micropores, macropores? What is my organic matter? And then start thinking, okay, you know, maybe I'll need a hydrator or more than an infiltrator in this scenario, or vice versa, right? So understanding your soil can really lead into understanding how your soil surfactants and which soil surfactant is best for your course, right? So ultimately, what soil surfactants can do is they help improve water infiltration, right? We have that class that helps water infiltrate into that soil and get it deeper into the profile, pulling it and drying out that root zone. We also have products that are geared towards water retention, only hydrating and really, you know, binding onto those organic soil particles or organic molecules, forming that bridge and retaining the water in that system. You know, and ultimately what we want to do with soil surfactants is alleviate and reduce soil water repellency, or that localized dry spot that we see, right? We want to get firm, fast playing surfaces with our soil surfactants. You know, I say infiltration surfactants won't help hydrate. There will be some reduction in localized dry spot, because naturally, as these molecules move through, some will start forming those bridges, but more of those molecules and those soil surfactants are focused on reducing the surface tension, working on that water and moving it through there. So all of these products should help reduce and alleviate the soil water repellency, but just to different levels. You know, what it will do again with the hydration is enhance the uniform lateral and vertical water distribution of these products. And what that does again is enhance the pesticide and fertilizer performance. It enhances the delivery, and it also enhances the span of where these products are uniformly within your soil, right? So it helps them either be uptaken by the plant with your nutrients, or disrupt the fungus or the fungus growing with the various either fungicides or pesticides that are there, right? And even pesticides too, looking at pre-emergence, looking at insecticides, those all fall into that realm, right? We can help move pre-emergence into that right level within the soil, or we can help move insecticides into the right level of the soil to be most effective in controlling what you're trying to control. This also just prepares, again, going back to that winter preparation, preparing the soil for the spring and the summer, and reducing that winter stress, right? So soil surfactants can be utilized in all of these different scenarios. And, you know, that's kind of why we have a great span of these products, right? Because not everyone's soils are the same. You're not always trying to use them for the same end goal, and maybe more water infiltration or hydration. So we have these different products to kind of address that. So that was the soil surfactant portion of that. Now moving on to some of the adjuvants, right? And trying to understand when to use certain adjuvants and with what products. And so when we look at adjuvants, there's over 670 different products that claim adjuvant functionality, right? So that's a lot of products to really try to parse out and say, all right, what is best for me? So they were then broken down even further into about 14 categories, right? And you can see these 14 categories listed here on the right. So those 670 products were put into these different categories, but that's still a lot to really kind of sift through and understand what is best. And a lot of these products, what they'll do here is, as you can see, they have claims that they do more than one thing, right? A lot will claim that they do 2 or 3 things, but based on really how well that they're manufactured, the raw ingredients that they utilize, and the limitations of kind of the regulatory aspect of these adjuvants. You know, sometimes they can claim things just because that chemistry has been known to do it, but it might not do it at the concentration that it's at in that formulation, right? They can claim it because that product or in that active ingredient is known to have that claim, but at the concentration that it's in at the formula, it won't do those things, right? So you can start using products and think it has one way of, or, you know, helping you in one way, but it actually might not be really helping you because of the concentration, how it's formulated. And also, you know, we have 38 different manufacturers and distributors of adjuvants out there. There's a ton. You can see them all here on the right. So who do you really use? How do you know who to use? You know, and who makes these high efficient products and adjuvants that will increase the performance of the protection products that we're using. And so why do you even really need adjuvants? So let's get into that, right? So again, we talk about that surface tension in the previous slides and how water really loves itself. It loves forming those droplets on there, and it has a small contact area on the leaf, right? When the water is curving like so, it really only contacts the leaf on that lower curvature portion. So we want to have it spread out more evenly across the leaf surface so it can evenly penetrate into the leaf and truly deliver some of these crop protection products or these pesticides. Fungicides will move past the cuticle in through there in a more limited capacity, because truly water is just not good at delivering these products, and we need adjuvants to truly spread them out across the leaf. And so there are various classifications of adjuvants, and at least here that we look at Precision Labs. One of them being a utility modifier, so things that modify products within the tank, right? So this modifies spray solution to make it compatible with your protection products. You know, we look at a glyphosate, let's say, or if we look at products that are high, if your spray water is very high in bicarbonates and it has a high pH, we have utility modifiers that are able to acidify that, are able to kind of sequester those bicarbonates in there and make your spray water better for spraying. Additionally, we have compatibility agents in there. So this compatibility agent called Convert allows various products that might not really mesh well together to be fully compatible. And we have different mixing charts and ratios on how to do that to get the most compatible mix when you're applying or putting multiple products into a tank, but that's just one class. The next class would be spray modifiers. So through the air, drift reduction, deposition aids, spreader stickers, these things all modify the behavior of that spray droplet through the deposition and getting them actually delivered to the target and that surface, right? So 2 products from us, Border 2.0 is our massive, big mover for doing drift reduction agency and deposition aid. That combines both of those products together, providing drift reduction and deposition, making sure that those droplets stay wetter longer on that leaf surface. That's what deposition aids do. They allow that droplet to stay wetter and not evaporate as quickly, so that product, that pesticide in that water droplet is still able to be taken up by that plant. And spreader stickers, truly just as the name says, they allow that product to spread across that leaf surface and adhere to that leaf surface to allow better efficacy of these protection products. And lastly, we have these activators. And actually, just due to the limited time we have today, I'll be really focusing on the activator adjuvants. So these are your NISs, your surfactants, your MSOs, your COCs, your high surfactant oils. So that all really falls into that realm of activators. And so when we look at activators, right, we have the initial one as surfactants. So there's general purpose non-ionic surfactants. These are older chemistries, and some of them are still utilized today because they're still very effective. But some have also been phased out just for newer, more innovative chemistries that we have on the adjuvancy side. Others are really more targeted for specific uses. So more active, better chemistry. Those are more of those innovative products. And then we have these multifunctional. Like I said, we have a surfactant with that deposition aid. So it's allowing a non-ionic surfactant to spread that product more evenly across that leaf surface, but also allow that spread to stay wetter longer to evenly and deliver and more effectively deliver those protection product chemistries into the plant or just remaining on the leaf surface. The other aspect is penetrance. So these are a lot of the oils, right? And so really what these oils do is because the waxy cuticle is also technically an oil. Oil dissolves oil. These oils will be on the leaf surface. And if we're really trying to get a penetrant in there, that oil solubilizes that waxy cuticle and making it almost, in a sense, and lack of better term, almost like a gel at that waxy leaf cuticle to allow some of these products to more evenly penetrate and allowing more penetration of these products because it's breaking down that waxy cuticle layer on these leaf surfaces. So all of our oils fall in there, from the modified seed oils to the crop oil concentrates and our high surfactant oils. And our high surfactant oils are now more and more being utilized just for the innovation of what they are, providing both surfactancy and that oil aspect in there. So what are some guidelines for selecting our activator adjuvant? So like I kind of said, likes dissolve likes, right? So I said that oil dissolves the waxy surface. The same is true with our chemistries, right? Products that are more water soluble will be dissolved by better by more NISs, right? So NISs mesh well and will be able to dissolve more water soluble pesticides. And so non-ionic surfactants, when your pesticide is more water soluble, is usually the go-to because likes dissolve likes. On the other side, some of your oils should be utilized with oil soluble pesticides. So pesticides that tend to be more oil soluble, utilize these MSOs or these COCs because likes dissolve likes again, and that will truly increase the efficacy of your product. If you have a non-ionic surfactant with an oil soluble pesticide, those things are going to be fighting each other and they won't blend and mesh well within your solution. So you want to have an NIS with water soluble products to evenly distribute that pesticide in your solution. And again, with the oils, that will more evenly distribute an oil soluble pesticide within your solution or your spray mix, excuse me. So even moving further into that, now we have those high surfactant oils. Like I said, there are products now that you want to have oil soluble and water soluble products in the tank at the same time. Time is valuable. You guys need to be able to apply multiple products in one foul swoop. So some of these high surfactant oils, high surfactant oil adjuvants allow both water soluble and oil soluble products to be able to mesh and pretty much live in a happy atmosphere or environment within your spray mix, right? So when you're trying to have both products in there, high surfactant oils are your way to go. So this is kind of a quick breakdown of water solubility for these post-emergent herbicides. And so this is a very big span. At the top, we have products that are very water insoluble. So all at the top, so water insoluble at the top and water soluble at the bottom. And so this is just a span, right? So you can kind of utilize this as, all right, where does my herbicide fall within the span? If we're more at the top or bottom, or depending on its water solubility, this allows you to really hone down, okay, which adjuvant is best for me to utilize. And this is obviously not all the products in the industry, but this is kind of just a snapshot. And so now, when you're selecting these adjuvants, some might say, okay, is it really truly a decrease in performance if I utilize the wrong adjuvant? And so what we have found is that without applying an adjuvant at all, you can reduce the performance of some of these herbicides or pesticides by 30 to 90%. And this is some data that we've collected with other universities, Purdue, other things. by selecting the wrong adjuvant, utilizing a non-ionic surfactant in a scenario where an oil should have been utilized, you can reduce the performance from 5 to 50%. So obviously that's a big drop off, and you have potential to injure the crop with some phytotoxicity if these things are utilized in the wrong way. And then again, we kind of go back to when we talked about there's so many different providers and manufacturers of adjuvants. How do you know which one to select, and why should I be selecting a premium adjuvant over one that I could pay much less for? Well, there's about a 25 to 25% performance gap when you utilize products that are not as premier as we say adjuvancy wise. It might be a little, the active ingredients might not be as well sourced or well distributed in the formulation. So looking at picking the right adjuvant, so we have a Mazethapyr performance, and as you can see on the right, there is no additives, and that the absorption of that was very limited. When it was applied with fertilizers, non-surfactants, or crop oils, you can see a significant increase from about 3 to 5% to over 40% of that product was then being absorbed. And now when you add in a combination of non-ionic surfactants, fertilizer, or crop oil concentrates and fertilizers, you can see again increases in that performance. So this here is just showing, okay, why would I even utilize an adjuvant, right? Well, here you can see the performance and the absorption of a Mazethapyr was very low. But when various adjuvants were added, either non-ionic surfactants, crop oils, or combination of these surfactants, these oils, and fertilizers, you can see significant increase of absorption and true efficacy of these products. Now, this is kind of looking at, all right, what should I apply? Or utilizing the wrong adjuvant with the wrong product, right? So this is, we're looking at glyphosate performance on broadleaf control. No adjuvant, as you can see, probably due to some of those hard water ions in there, tying up the glyphosate, the performance was decreased. When we add AMS or we add a non-ionic surfactant on its own, you can see a slight increase of the glyphosate performance and control of these broadleafs. But when you combine both the non-ionic surfactant and the AMS, which is obviously standardly used for glyphosate, that's why we suggest utilizing the non-ionic surfactants and AMS with glyphosate, because the AMS is allowing to sequester some of these hard water ions in there, not getting them tied up with glyphosate. And the non-ionic surfactant is effectively spreading that product more evenly across your surface of your plant that you're trying to effectively eliminate, and that increases the performance. Now you look at utilizing either the crop oil or the methylated seed oil, the modified seed oils. Those significantly reduce the performance compared to having no adjuvant alone, right? Because that is not the right adjuvant that should be utilized. The difference between MSO1 and MSO2, MSO1 is a premium product or a premium adjuvant sourced with premium ingredients, compared to MSO2, which is more of a cheaper and lower grade adjuvant. So you can see even the drop off there of about 10% performance when utilizing Premier versus not. And this story continues into here, right? So this is actually some data pulled from our ag side. So, look at these plants and these weeds at the bottom as just, truly broadleaf weeds. And as you can see, right, MSO1, which is a high performing premium adjuvant, MSO2, more on your lower tier adjuvancy, and then just the crop oil concentrate that is truly not the best to be utilized for glyphosate. What you can see here is that those premium products increase the performance of glyphosate and sharpen when those two products are added together, compared to having a less premium product or a less premium adjuvant as in MSO2, right? So there is a reason to select higher quality adjuvants than lower quality adjuvants. And so who we lean on is the CPDA, and those are the Council of Producers and Distributors of Agrotechnology. And what the CPDA really stands for is they are a premier advocate in the agriculture realm for these adjuvants and inert ingredients for suppliers. And what they do is they provide a third-party legislative and regulatory support for manufacturers, formulators, distributors of these adjuvants, and really help determine and say, okay, this adjuvancy does do what it claims to do. And so it was started in 2001 through a lot of our different manufacturers of adjuvants, preemptively to move to the EPA, regulate or be regulated. This is kind of their way of getting around the EPA. And they set 17 benchmarks for certification that all these adjuvants and their claims must be legitimized with the CPDA to be able to put them on and have their stamp of approval on your product, right? And so, like I said, the top 3 ingredients in your adjuvancy, usually those claims are looked at and say, all right, can you substantiate these claims with trials? And what is that surfactant content in there? These labels then are reviewed also by the CPDA. The SDSs are reviewed by the CPDA as a third-party source. And this truly in the manufacturing realm of adjuvants, it encourages good stewardship and production of these products to not make products and make product claims that truly cannot be substantiated by these adjuvants. So you'll see the CPDA certification on a lot of our adjuvants and some other adjuvants that are out there in the industry. And more manufacturers are citing a preference for CPDA adjuvants, right? I think over 53 different manufacturers are saying, we need to utilize CPDA products because what they claim to do is truly what they do. Some link, respray programs back to CPDA adjuvants. They'll say, look, if you had issues with your spray prior and you need to respray and you weren't using CPDA adjuvants, use these CPDA adjuvants, see how they help that respray program and truly increase the efficacy and performance. And again, they are a third party that ensures the performance of the manufacturer, right? And so just one of our products being Activo, this is an adjuvant that we've seen really truly push the boundaries of activator adjuvants. It's improving controlled products of fungicides and various PGRs. It enhances the effects of PGRs and the uptake of PGRs. And has we actually also added a pigment in here into the activator adjuvant to be more appealing, right? And it's flexible for use all throughout the season. And so what we can see here is in some of this data, you truly do see when Activo is added with a product like Insignia, it improves the performance on dollar spot by 75%. The same is held true with Anthracnose used with Daconil, 65% increase with Activo, or just truly utilizing an adjuvant when you're utilizing or when you're trying to spray some of these other products, right? And you can visually see here the plot on the right compared to the plot on the left. Some of that is that pigment. It's also just a better delivery of that Insignia into that to really reduce your Anthracnose. And so again, here with the PGRs, we did this with Primo Max and Anu. And as you can see here, just briefly looking at it, we reduced by just using Activo, we reduced overall clipping reduction by 23%. So we reduced clippings by 23% when Activo was applied with Primo Max. And we also increased the duration of these products, right? You can see where these arrows, these dotted lines are. That's when the reapplication was made, and you can see the significant decrease in clippings that we had when Activo was applied, or truly an adjuvant was applied with this PGRs. And again, the same trend holds true here, 20% reduction of clippings compared to Anu alone. And at those dates, again, we extended the time. So we have a lot, again, you have a lot of these different products that claim to do different things. So leaning on the CPDA to look and say, all right, are the claims of all these products true in what they do? Should be one of your number one sources at seeing, if you have good adjuvants or not. So when looking at your adjuvant selection, initially know the conditions and limitations of your spray water, looking at bicarbonates, pH, etc. If you will have to have a reduction of bicarbonates or you have to reduce your pH, and understand the limitations of your production products, right? We know glyphosate needs AMS and NIS to perform better. And so know these limitations to help you choose the adjuvants. Know the water solubility of these products to be understanding which NIS or oil to be utilizing with these products, and understand the goal of your spray, because that will help you, right? If I need a spreader sticker, that will help you really understand which adjuvancy to use to maximize your performance. And again, lean on the CPDA to look for these premier adjuvants to maximize the overall performance. So you're not just paying a little less, but not really getting the true effect and increase in performance with these adjuvants that you see. And so with that, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in and being with me for the last hour. Here is the approval code, and if we have any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer them. So thank you for your time.
All right, Matt, thank you so much, sir. Great information. It's always good to get a refresher on adjuvants and these materials that we kind of use quite a bit throughout the year, but it's always good to get the background and make sure we're utilizing them properly. So thank you so much. With that, let me check out the chat box. I've been watching it here, and it looks like I think we're good. I haven't seen really any questions come up. But yeah, so with that, guys, thank you so much. Again, we're going to kick this series back off again this September. So be looking for those links and for the registrations for those. This session was recorded. For anybody who couldn't attend, we definitely have those GCSAA credits available to you for this presentation, as well as some of the prior presentations that we've done this spring. And so with that, I want to again thank Dr. Fleetwood, and thank you all for your time, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.